Hey, welcome to Dan's Model Works, and we are back with part 3 of our pre-war rival build. And in my left hand, we have Seversky's P-35, quite a stubby little plane. And in my right hand, we have the Curtiss P-36A, and also known as the Hawk. And these were pretty much contenders for the same U.S. Army Air Force contract. And Seversky ended up winning the contract, but the Army turned around and ordered actually more of the P-36 in the end. And both aircraft served in the same squadron side by side. One thing that we've done a little different here is if we look at the side of the P-35, you can see there's a giant window here. And this was a feature of the P-35. There was a seat back there, and I think they were able to do this because originally this design had provision for a rear gunner back here. So they could have a rear seat back there, and the center of gravity wouldn't be screwed up too much. At any rate, most of the time, there was a metal panel sitting here. But if they knew they were going to be carrying a passenger, that metal panel would be removed, and they could put the window in place. And there are quite a large number of photos with the window in place. So, they don't give you the window. This is a hobbycraft kit. They don't give you the window. And all they do is they give you a piece of plastic to go in there. So, I ended up using part of an Aquafina bottle and glued it in place. And with any sort of luck, it's not going to fall off or fall into the inside of the plane before we're finished. Because, you know, I can never do anything the easy way. Now, the other kit here is by Academy, and a few people in the comments have said that these were both, in fact, hobbycraft kits at one time, which is entirely possible. In that hobbycraft, a lot of their kits were tooled and produced in Korea, and of course Academy is a Korean company, so it's possible that Academy bought the tooling. I don't know. Fit and finish so far on both of them has been pretty good. There's nothing really that has caused me any concerns. The trailing edges of the wings look pretty good, nice and thin. So it's time to get moving on this. Basically, the next step I'm going to take is to put all the little lumpy bits on to get us ready for painting. So anything that's got to do with the landing gear, you can see we've got a large notch here, and you can have wheels up or wheels down for this. And the P-35, there needs to be kind of a pilot's headrest installed here. So I'm going to get to work on gluing all those bits on. Right, so things probably don't look too different. Most of my effort in the last couple days has been on adding the last couple of bumpy bits on here. We have the headrest for the pilot. We've got the fairings for the landing gear, a couple of scoops added to our P-35. And it has had some seam work done, mostly just sanding, not really any putty required. And same thing for our P-36A. We've got the machine gun blisters on the cowling. We've added the part back here for the rear landing gear. We've got a couple of scoops, and these are the fairings for the exhausts. And once again, some very minor seam work, just sanding things down. The next step is going to be, we're going to be putting some Umbro mask all on our window here, and probably putting some wet paper towel in the cockpits here in preparation for painting these gloss black. Gloss black! Why am I painting these gloss black? The reason these are going to be painted gloss black is the final finish is going to be this Alclad 2 lacquer, white aluminum. So I've used this once before, and it seemed to have worked pretty good, but it requires that you prime your model's gloss black first, and then you apply this. To be honest, I would much rather be using my old standby, which is Model Master Chrome Silver, which I think looks just as good, and you can do it in one step. But as most people realize, there's a lot of uncertainty with Testors products. The last thing I've heard, which was probably a couple weeks ago, was Rust-Oleum, which owns RPM, has changed their mind. They're possibly not going to be phasing out Testors paint. But that doesn't mean that that the Model Master will ever come back. So I may as well make the best of it and use this finish here. Alright, as you can see, we've got two very sexy gloss black planes here. Now this is Testors Gloss Black. And basically Alclad 2 says you need to prime using a gloss black. So that's what I've done. These are still a little tacky. So I'm going to give them another day to dry before going on to the Alclad. Last thing I want is to spray that on and have the lacquer crinkle the paint underneath. So while I'm waiting for that to happen, I think I'm going to do some of the landing gear work and stuff like that. I'm doing prep work on the landing gear for the P-35. You can see that the one on the left there is shorter. We need to cut down the parts to that length if we're going to have the landing gear in the down position. So that's something they point out in the instructions. Keeping myself busy while I'm waiting for the main aircraft to get back from paint. I've been working on the landing gear. Now I still need to touch up the tires here with some German gray. They've basically been painted, but I needed some touch-ups. Where the clothespins are hanging onto, they've been left unpainted because that's where some of the assembly still has to occur. There's some little retraction rods and things that need to be put in. And these were, of course, the P-35 gear. So here's a P-36 landing gear. You can see once again I've only done the lower part. I still need to put the landing gear doors on these. But you can see I've only done the lower part because the upper part has some bits that have to be glued on. So I'm not a happy camper. I used the Alclad 2 on this, and you can see there's some rough areas here, and it basically took the entire bottle to paint these two small aircraft, especially the underside. You can see there's some strange artifacts that occurred. Now I think what might have happened is I used Testors Gloss Black as my primer. And even though I really let these two aircraft sit for the better part of a week, I think what happened is the lacquer thinner in the Alclad attacked the Testors Gloss Black when it was applied. And I think that's what caused the roughness. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit these with a thin coat of Testors silver and see if I can come up with a better finish. It's not like this is amazing anyway. Now I have used the Alclad 2 before, but I think that time I sprayed it on top of Tamiya Gloss Black, and it may have resisted the lacquer thinner better. I don't know. It's a little discouraging because it's basically adding almost a week here, because I'm going to end up painting them with the Testors silver, and then I got to let it sit for another 2 or 3 days before I can even hit it with Tamiya gloss coat so I can decal. So yeah, I'm not real happy. Okay, I'm much happier with the results this time. This was just a very quick coat of Testors gloss silver. I think it looks a lot better, and I'm not ripping on the Owlclad 2. I think it was my mistake in applying it over top of an enamel. I think it might have done better over top of either another lacquer, like a black gloss black lacquer, or an acrylic black lacquer. But anyway, they're bright silver, which is what I wanted. My next step here, before I just leave them alone for a while so that the paint can set up really good before I gloss coat them, is the control surfaces on these planes, on both of them, were cloth. They weren't. They were basically doped fabric. Now, they had a silver finish on them, but in certain light you can see it looks a little different. So what I got here is I've got some Testors flat aluminum, and I'm going to use that on the ailerons and on the elevators. I'm not really going to worry about doing the rudders because I have decals to go on those. So hopefully it's evident, but the ailerons and the elevators have been painted, and once again, as I said before, they were done using Testors flat aluminum. I think I'm probably going to use some of my precious Model Master chrome silver on a couple other small panels and things. I might even use Tamiya flat aluminum or silver if I have any on some other panels, just to liven things up a little bit. And then I'm going to leave everything alone and give it a real good chance to set before I hit it with some gloss coat to seal everything in. I've gloss coated my silver, which actually took a little bit of the extreme shine off, but that's okay. You can see I've already masked here for our cowl markings. We don't have a decal for this. The very lip of the cowl has to be red on both planes because they're going to be in the same squadron. So you can see I've already got the tape on here. The P-35 is easy because right where the red comes to, there's actually a panel line. The P-36 is a little more difficult. The demarcation between the red and the natural finish is in the middle of a panel, so it's a little more vague. So you can see I've masked here, and make things even more difficult, we have the machine gun blisters right there, and as well we have a scoop right here, so that's going to be a little more difficult. Let's see how badly we can butcher this. So what we've got here is, well, it looks like somebody's put some lipstick on these poor pigs. That occurred to me after I had put the masking tape on, and the masking actually went very, very well. Sometimes I've masked stuff off, and you take every precaution, and the paint just sneaks underneath like crazy, and all you feel like doing is crying. But these went quite well. So the next thing I got to do is wing walks. Those areas that are oftentimes parallel to the cockpit on the wings that are there for traction. Now, the P-35 actually gives us some wing walk decals, which is nice. Good, I'm all for that. The P-36, however, does not give us any, and there isn't any that are shown in the instructions. So, does that mean that it didn't have wing walks? Don't know. I've gone online and I've found numerous pictures of silver P-36s that have black wing walks on them. Although I suspect they're more modern pictures. It's possible that back in the 30s that they didn't have wing walks. I don't know. I can't find any old P-36 pictures from The 30s that are taken from this kind of angle, they're all like this, sitting on the ground, and you can't see whether there was wing walks on there. So, you know what? I'm just going to paint some on. They basically, from what I've been able to see, they go from this seam right here all the way back. So I'm just going to paint them on, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know what's going to happen? The sun will still rise tomorrow. That's my next step, is to put the wing walks here on the wing roots and get those done. So our wing walks and our anti-glare panel here have been painted, and let's get the masking off and see how badly I botched it. Ooh, that turned out nice and clean. We'll do the wing walks. Oh, a little bit got underneath there. That one's nice and clean. See how the other side did. Just realized I have a canopy under where I'm putting my tape. There we go. Okay, I can touch that up. There we go. Here's the wing walks there and our anti-glare panel. Interestingly, the P-35 does not get an anti-glare panel there. It is going to have the wing walks, though. They're a decal on this particular model. Hey, it's Easter Sunday. I have the day off. It's not a paid holiday, so I actually had to shuffle the schedule between my part-time and full-time job last week. But on Friday? Yeah, I think it was Friday, I finally put up, I shouldn't say finally, because the whole thing only took me maybe about 2.5 weeks. I put up part 1 of the Colombo Express, which is the container ship build, which based on the first 2 days of views will probably be way more popular than pre-war rivals, but I still want to do this project, so I'm going to finish it off. So I've wasted most of the day. It's about 3:30 because my back has been sore. So I've forced myself to sit down and start working on these again. And the sad thing is you had to force yourself to sit down to do something you're enjoying. Now that I'm sitting here and I'm working on these, I'm enjoying it. I'm like, hey, great, awesome. But it took me all day to put my bum in the chair. So I've started decaling. You can see I've got the wing walks on our P-35. And I had to double check it on the box art several times to make sure those little red panels, which you can barely see on the camera, but they are there, are on the trailing edge. So I did the required touch-ups on, it'd help if I put it on the screen. I did the required touch-ups on the wing walks on our P-36. So things are coming along. I'm reasonably happy with how things are going. I just checked the instructions. The propellers are solid flat black. There's no safety tips on them, at least from what I can see. So things are moving on. All right, as you can see, I've got some decaling done on our P-35. Most of it is on. The notable exception is the stripes that come up the side, and they actually extend up over the razorback. That is this piece right there. So I'm leaving those decals off. I would like to seal these decals in. So if I do that, then I'm going to be spraying on top of some canopy bits here. So I'm going to hold off on that, and hopefully they don't peel off on me sometime in the future. The only other decal I did not put on is, this is the correct location for the Indian Chief's head. And of course, on this side of the fuselage, this is where our window is. And I tried to look at some pictures, and I was wondering, was it placed differently on this side? No, it was placed directly on the hatch. And any that had the replacement hatch with the window, like we've modeled here, you don't see any trace of the insignia at all. Now, I did set it down on top there, figuring, you know what, I'll put the decal on, I'll cut the edges, and then when the window is clear, we'll see parts of the insignia sticking out the sides. Well, the insignia actually fits entirely on the overall hatch. So what I'm thinking is the panels that had the window did not have the logo on it. That's all I can tell you. So I didn't put it on there. As a matter of fact, the poor decal is sitting right here. I just tossed it down there. So I'm going to be testing on one of these decals my setting solution and seeing if it does anything tragic. If it doesn't, then the rest of them are going to get a coat, and we'll move on to the P-36. There was some minor crinkliness when I first put the decal setting solution on, but once dried, they've melted onto the model really, really nicely. Quite happy with that. I think I'm gonna, like I said earlier, I'm gonna hit it with some gloss coat to seal these in. The two stripes on the sides, I'm gonna put those on last. I think the decal setting solution will melt those on, and I won't really have to worry too much about them peeling up in the future, even if they're not sealed in. I think the setting solution does a good job of making them permanent. Now I'm going to start on the P-36, get those decals on. Not that there was any real guesswork involved with the Hobbycraft kit, but you can see here that Academy actually gives you numbers for each decal that correspond, of course, to the decal sheet, which is always nice. So here's our decals on our P-36, sorry. And it's had a coat of gloss coat put on to make sure that the decals do not come off. As was the case with the P-35 decals, these settled in really, really nicely. They bedded down well. Nothing to complain about. And as I mentioned with the P-35, I was going to gloss coat it before I worried about putting the stripes on back here, because they've got to go onto the spine. Now, just some administrative notes about timing and things. From the last little bit of footage you saw, 3 weeks have gone by. It was supposed to be maybe 3 days. Basically, what happened was I decided I was going to take a short break, very short break, in order to work on the containers for the Colombo Express. Because what I wanted to do was I wanted to, and you'll see an explanation to this in the video for that, which hopefully is going to be coming up next. But you can see I've got some little rectangles in here, and these are made from bits and pieces of the container stacks. And I wanted to have these ready to go so I could put them on this piece of plastic and start building a mold. Well, it took a lot longer to do the work I was going to do than I thought. And that just comes down to my inefficiency of only working on my hobby for about an hour a day every 2 or 3 days if I'm lucky. So that's what happened there. And unfortunately, I never wanted to have this masking film, this mask all on this window this long. And it's been there for probably well over a month. So I think we better peel that off and see if we can get it to come off without destroying the window. Hey, more successful than I deserve. It came off cleanly, and we can see in the window and see that little seed in there. Awesome. There is a little scratch just underneath the window there. I'm going to touch that up,
But overall, I am happy. That's the result I wanted. When we look in there, we see a seat. I'm trying to get a good angle here. Okay, come on, camera, focus. I'm not happy with this camera, as I've said before. It seems to always focus on the wrong thing. There we go. We can see right inside. You can see the ribbing and everything. That's pretty cool. Not to be left out, we can finally pull the paper towel out of the cockpit here. There we go. So we struggle with some light in there. Still working on the light on this work area here. I think I can definitely add some more. But there we go. Okay, I lied. The next thing I was going to work on was landing gear. Makes a little more sense why I have it flopping around on its canopies while you're messing around with the landing gear. One thing I want to mention, and both kits suffer from this fault, is if you look at the main landing gear legs here, you can see they just basically go into a set of holes on the underside of the wing. Now, this could be where the actual hinge is located, mounted directly on the underside of the wing, because, I mean, Lord knows there's enough of a fairing here. They could have molded in a representation of that hinge, and I'll show you on the P-36. The same thing. The landing gear just mounts into a set of holes. Well, where's the hinge? There should be some sort of hinge visible there. Now, on both of these, there's still a set of, I would call them retraction arms that come from here and go backwards. So that will camouflage things a bit, but it is a bit disappointing. It's something I guess I should have looked ahead in the instructions and foresaw and potentially made some extra details. Okay, we've got those retraction arms in place here, and I don't know how they would work. I don't know where they go inside the wing, because it seems to me they would have to go through the back of the wing. I don't know. At any rate, I'm not going to get into it, at least through there. These are the kit parts on this side, and they fit pretty good. The ones on the other side are 2 pieces of styrene rod, because one fell inside the wing and disappeared. Actually, no, it didn't. You can actually see it sitting there. After 10 minutes of trying to get it to come out, and it wouldn't come out, I see that it has now slid to touch the styrene rod that I put in place. Anyway, I ended up putting these 2 styrene rods in. They look like the kit parts. By the time I give them a little bit of aluminum, they will look just fine. And you can see I've put the landing gear doors on the tail wheel, and I've also added the exhaust stubs up here at the front. So through the magic of not filming it, we are almost finished. The propeller on our P-35 does turn very reluctantly, but there's nothing inside to retain it, so I'm just going to leave this one just a push fit on here. The P-36 also suffers from no engineering to retain the propeller, save for actually gluing it in place. So I will be gluing it in place and fussing over how I'm going to position it, because, you know, once it's glued in, that's it. It's going to be in that position. So the final assembly continues apace. As you can see, I've got the canopies glued in place as well, and the landing gear on. So I'm just gonna thrash out the last little bits of gluing bits and bobbles on here, and I'll bring you back when I've got it all together. And here they are, all done. Pre-war rivals.
course, the stubby one is the P-35. Never actually had an official name, although it was sometimes known as the Framingham Flash. And the longer one, of course, is the Curtis P-35, P-36, sometimes known as the Hawk. It was also known as the Model 75, and it was made in many, many different versions for customers around the world, not just for the U.S. Army Air Corps. So it was kind of cool building these at the same time. The kits were basically the same in terms of quality and fit. And they shared some of the same drawbacks. As I mentioned during the build, the way the landing gear just kind of popped into a couple of holes. There really should have been some representation of a hinge there. The thing is if these were in fact, if the kits were in fact designed by the same guy, which is possible, the sprues don't look the same. It's not like where you look at Matchbox sprues and you can tell it's a Matchbox sprue. These didn't look like they'd been designed by the same person. But that doesn't mean they didn't both start off as Hobbycraft kits. So anywho, we're going to take a few glamour shots of these guys. So, thanks for watching, and until next time, just keep on modeling.